Hey there everybody, Steve the Amateur Historian coming to you from Northwest Portland, the Pearl, more specifically. And in my last episode I did a video about an Austrian immigrant named Anton Numvar. And essentially the focus of the story was we had a person who likely met with foul play but who disappeared and nobody knows what happened to him. And there's extensive reasoning to believe they died, and also probably the primary motive for why they would disappear is at the time of their vanishing, guy was carrying a lot of money. Well, I've got another story, oddly enough from the same year, just a few months earlier, than Anton Numvar vanished November 17th, 1910. And this case in particular goes back to May 1910, so the year is the same, but more specifically, we have a very similar story about somebody who had a lot of money on him and who vanished mysteriously. That and so much more on a fresh episode of Historic Murders of Portland. So many correlations between these two cases, and the fact that they happen only a couple of months apart is jaw-dropping. This particular case I'm bringing to you is the case of a 64-year-old woman named Hannah Smith, who was last seen May 8th, 1910. Again, it's just a couple months before Anton Numvar disappeared. They both were living in kind of shabby conditions that they probably could have done better then. And they both had disposable income that would make them a potential target. They actually lived really close to each other. Hannah Smith lived a couple blocks this way. I forgot where I was at. So I'm like in the hub of, this is like the 13th Avenue Historical District, because it's all like old warehouses and stuff. The railway lines used to come through here, so a lot of, warehouses were here to take goods and to ship off goods and so on and so forth. But they lived super close to each other, and they both were planning on relocating when they suddenly disappeared. And of course the thing that correlates them the most in this vein is they both vanished without a trace, likely the victims of murder in this case. Because Hannah Smith she lived in this little back room of an old church that was probably demolished not too long after, so this place has probably been gone for many, many decades, potentially almost 100 years. This case happened 110 years ago, but so Hannah Smith was living essentially in squalor. She was a woman in her mid-60s, and she had some disposable income. She was known to have at least $655 to her name. So she had some cash. This is 1910. $655, that's a good stash. And shortly before her disappearance in May, she had started telling people that she was moving to the Mount Scott area, which that's pretty far from here. Mount Scott is way off this way. It's way off, like, kind of the most southeastern point of southeast Portland. Like, it's a good distance from here, and it's still fairly underdeveloped in certain areas, so I can only guess in 1910 it was still pretty, fairly underdeveloped. There probably wasn't a lot of homes out there, but that's probably what someone like her would want. She'd want some peace and quiet. So, as I understand it, she has over $650 to her name, and she's planning on moving to a new place and, probably just enjoying the rest of her life. She'd even told people that she'd already made kind of a deposit. It was small. It was like $25 on her new place. So, again, we have no reason to think this is somebody that would disappear of her own creation. She would just want to vanish off into nowhere. She was getting older. Maybe she had some health issues. Maybe she knew she wasn't going to live much longer. I obviously wouldn't know. That information never came up. So maybe she would tell people that she was, just moving away to this place that not a lot of people could get to easily, when really she was just going to go off and let herself pass away. But why is she holding on to all this money? And it still seems strange to me, even in that vein, why she would tell people she's just moving to another town. So again, logistically, she should have been moving to Mount Scott, way off this direction. But that never happened. She never made it. She vanished. So this here is Northwest Davis and 13th as it stands today. I don't know what corner this old church would have been on. I haven't found any old pictures of this block, but one of these four corners there was an old church, and it's where Hannah Smith was living. And here's where things get a little bit weird. So May 8th, Hannah Smith vanishes. Nobody knows where she is. And people are going to start panicking. The more days that go by and nobody hears from her, the more people are going to, genuinely be concerned. What happened? About 2 weeks go by, just enough for everybody to really start freaking out. And a woman named Anna Harper, who was reportedly a close friend of Hannah Smith, claims to get a telegram. Shows it to authorities. It's a telegram, reportedly from Hannah Smith, sent from Los Angeles, California. So here's a woman rambling on about going to Mount Scott, which is, 15, 20 miles that way. Instead, she's 1,000 miles away in Los Angeles now. At least according to this telegram that comes through. So you're thinking, what would drive someone to literally completely up and change their plans? This is a 64-year-old woman doing this. She just up and tells everyone she's moving to Mount Scott, and all of a sudden she's in Los Angeles. And the telegram is very vague. Just, hey, I'm in Los Angeles. That's it. I'll try to telegram you again later at some point. Why wouldn't you just telegram her and give her all the pertinent information right now? So, it's something. It's something to go on. So, the Portland authorities start contacting the Los Angeles authorities. They want to get this figured out. They want to see if there's any validation to this telegram, which is, it's all very fishy. It doesn't make any sense at all. And oh wait, did I say that Anna Harper was a friend of Hannah Smith? How wrong I must be. Some newspaper articles referred to her as a friend, an acquaintance of Hannah Smith. No. Anna Harper was her niece. So we have her niece saying she's gotten a telegram from this missing woman, and it's very suspicious. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. However, it is what it is. And so, it ends up coming out that back in January, just a couple of months before Hannah Smith vanishes, she's actually implicated as a witness for her niece Anna Harper, who's going through this messy divorce with reportedly this horribly abusive husband of hers, and Smith ends up being a prominent witness for her and defending her and helping her get this divorce. Harper specifically said that the husband was verbally abusive, that she had seen him physically attack her, saw him throw her into a stove. So she was instrumental in getting her niece away from this very violent beau of hers. So that was actually fairly critical to this overall case, because now suddenly, like, maybe we have a suspect. We have the ex of Hannah Smith's niece, who reportedly is violent. His violence was believable enough that it helped Anna Harper get away from him. And Hannah Smith, who disappears a few months later, is instrumental in making that happen. So, people start pondering, could it be that Anna Harper's ex is the one that was responsible for Hannah Smith's disappearance? And then there's another twist. Just as quickly as this telegram that presumably shows Hannah Smith is alive and well, it's less than 48 hours later that a guy named E. Erickson, very suspicious fellow, it comes out that he actually fabricated this whole thing. He fabricated the telegram. How he got the niece of the disappeared woman to agree to vindicate this forgery is one thing. It seems like her niece, Anna Harper, kept suspicious company as it was, so I really don't know how to take that. But now this E. Erickson guy comes into the picture, who admits falsifying a document that obviously was created to present the notion that Hannah Smith was still alive. Well, why would someone fabricate a document to show someone's still alive unless they either know or are concerned that that certain individual is actually dead? And who was E. Erickson? Well, E. Erickson actually ran he was an undertaker. He ran an undertaking establishment, and he had apparently gotten into Hannah Smith's good graces enough that she actually kind of used him as her own personal bank. She apparently didn't trust banks, and so she would, any money she got, she would deposit it with E. Erickson at his business. So his undertaking business was kind of her personal bank. Strange. Wouldn't surprise me if he manipulated her into doing that. However, it also came out there was a woman named Mrs. E. Bowden, who was another friend, someone who was actually a friend of Hannah Smith, not related, who came out and said that, she was very suspicious of this E. Erickson guy, of his motives in regards to Hannah Smith. And she said that he had been just pilfering, just taking money from her left and right, and that she owed him like over $1,000. Something that I think he denied, because that puts more suspicion on him. But it showed that this E. Erickson guy was a sketchy character. And again, why is he creating fake documentation to make someone look like they're still alive? And that said, this undertaking establishment that Erickson was, I guess, I don't know if he owned it or if he just worked there. I think he ran it. It was located at the northwest intersection of Alder and 11th. Now, this is Alder and 11th right here. This is the northwest intersection. So, where this building is now, I don't think this is... Maybe this building was here? I don't think... This building doesn't quite say 1910 to me. But the business that he had would have been where this building is now. And again, it was reportedly an undertaker establishment. But beyond everything I've already told you, there's further suspicious activity in relation to E. Erickson and his business that was once located here. And it's interesting because it looks like whatever the business is right at the corner here it's empty right now. It looks like they're probably fixing it up, but this is probably where his undertaking establishment would have been. And since there's no business going on in this building today, clearly, I'm just gonna plop myself down right where potentially the front door to Erickson's undertaking business would have been. And did I mention how interesting it is? We're talking about a woman who probably disappeared and met with foul play, and she has this strange association with a guy that's used to dealing with dead bodies. But here's what makes E. Erickson even more suspicious. The last time, because I haven't even gotten to this yet, the last time Hannah Smith is seen alive on May 8th, she arrived at Erickson's establishment right here. She already had about $200 on her person, and she took out $455 of the money that she again kept here under the watchful eye of E. Erickson. So that's again how we know she had $655 on her. More than enough money to kill for her. When she arrived, this is kind of the description from the newspaper article. So it was nighttime. The nighttime she's last seen visiting this undertaking establishment where she withdrew her money. She said that she was going to put all this money towards her Mount Scott property. So maybe this whole Mount Scott thing was a ruse. She was being led to believe maybe she had a property there, but she was more being kind of led to take this money out. Because all of a sudden, she takes all this money out and then disappears. Little suspicious. And the person that helped her, withdraw that cash said that there was a woman that had come with her, a mystery woman, a woman that they didn't know, couldn't identify. Nobody who knew Hannah Smith really could determine who this strange woman was that was with her. It says A.B. Chase, that was the employee who worked here, this undertaking establishment, who helped her withdraw her money, said she saw a younger woman, and this woman waited outside. She never went in with Hannah. She seemed to be with her, coordinating with her. She was a companion, probably someone with a nefarious means. Where is my... oh, it's on my hand. I was about to say, where's my other glove? I only saw one glove here. So it's very suspicious that this woman that nobody can identify is just hanging out with Hannah Smith when she's taking all this money out. And she doesn't come inside. It's very, very strange behavior, especially since after Hannah Smith walks out of the establishment and goes off wherever, she's never seen again. Creepy. So, we have E. Erickson, who, if I haven't made it clear enough, I think he's about as guilty as sin in relation to this particular crime. I think Hannah Smith was an older woman. Maybe people wouldn't really notice. Maybe he heard, again, these people, Hannah Smith and E. Erickson obviously knew each other well, and she may have made mention that she was planning on moving to this more desolate area, kind of southeast of Portland. So maybe E. Erickson, who owes her a bunch of money, and who knows what else he may know about her, she may know about him. These are details that will never come to light. But it's obvious they had a very strange relationship. I mean, who runs an undertaking business and then convinces a little, a woman in her 60s to put all her money into his business instead of a bank? I mean, this was a sketchy, crooked guy, and I know he got busted for violations in relation to his business. And when you're an undertaker and you're getting busted for not doing your business right, that is a very strange guy. And I think there was a lot more than meets the eye in relation to the dynamic between these two. And he already owed, a friend said that he owed her $1,200, which means who knows how much more he may have actually owed her. And, I think there was dark motives that led this guy, for whatever reason, maybe he felt he had to, I don't know. But I think this E. Erickson guy did it himself or had Hannah Smith murdered. And probably took the money that she had on her. And probably figured nobody would really notice if she was moving out to Mount Scott, which again was a lot more desolate. I mean, it's still rural in certain parts around there. And that's kind of what I think happened. And you have to remember, this guy admitted to fabricating a telegram from Los Angeles, telling everybody, oh, hey, it's me, by the way, I'm fine and I'm still alive, so on and so forth. I mean, if that's not incriminating, I don't know what is. It was a clear effort on Erickson's part, and he forced, probably, her niece, who was probably in, troubling times then. She's just getting out of an abusive, relationship, and then her aunt suddenly disappears. And that seems pretty obvious. He was trying to cover up by creating the impression that someone who was actually dead was still alive, and you wouldn't do that unless you knew they were dead, and nobody else does. And here's the real dark part of the story is, again, this guy was an undertaker. Who knows how good of a killer he was, or if he even did that part himself, but this guy knew how to deal with, treat, and get rid of dead bodies. That was his profession. So when people ask, like, oh, Hannah Smith disappeared, well, what happened to her body? Well, the most likely suspect was an undertaker who would know how to get rid of that body. So that aspect added as well leads me even more to believe that E. Erickson not only was instrumental in killing off Hannah Smith, who disappeared without a trace, but he was absolutely instrumental in the disposing, I guess, of her body. That's absolutely what I believe happened in this case. Another person who was going to move off somewhere else and just kind of enjoy the last little vestiges of her life, like Anton Numvar, the case from my last video. And unfortunately, due to somebody else's greed and vindictiveness, it just didn't happen for these people. But there was one more little interesting nugget that happened in this case. It happened a couple months after Hannah Smith had vanished. In August 1910. So she disappears in May, August 1910. Again, she's living in this kind of back room of this kind of rundown old church. And a couple of women who actually knew her personally were in the area. I don't know if they were checking on her room or whatever, but they were going up the stairs to her room, and they were kind of this old beat-up carpeting. And there was like a piece that was kind of sticking out, and one of them reached down to kind of pull it up and move it, and it pulled the carpet up a little bit, and that revealed under the carpeting of the stairs leading up to her room the key to Hannah Smith's room. Now, of course, Hannah Smith would have no reason to put that key there herself. That seemed just another vindication further on down the road that obviously someone had killed her and done it, and was trying to do their best to make it look like maybe it didn't actually happen. So why would her key, somebody that wasn't Hannah Smith would have had to transport that key back to that site where she used to live and put the key there to make it look like maybe she was coming back at some time? I really don't know what the logic was, but it was, again, pretty clear vindication of the actions of somebody who was trying to create the impression that Hannah Smith was maybe still alive, maybe gonna come back. Who knows? And again, the only person who really fits the mold on that is E. Erickson, Mr. Fake Telegram himself, trying to create reasons for people to think someone who hasn't been verified as dead is absolutely still alive. But since the telegram was fake, we know he was in no position to actually make that claim if he's an innocent man. He wouldn't know like the rest of us. But his actions certainly tell me that he actually did know, and he killed Hannah Smith. That's my perspective, my belief in relation to this case. The disappearance of 64-year-old Hannah Smith back in May 1910. Tragic story. That even though she vanished never to be seen again, she was likely the victim of a homicide. So as always, gang, thank you so much for watching. It's always so uplifting when we get to the end of these, aren't we? And as always, sorry, I had to pause for a second. This guy in his freaking cab looked like he was just gonna jerk forward and take my friggin' legs out. As always, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit up that Patreon, wink, and as always, from deep into downtown Portland, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian, and I'll see you guys next time.